Good morning, comrades. Welcome to your Monday edition of the Quick Shot of Good Morning Comrade. I'm your host, Robert Johnson, and this show is a socialist and anarcho-communist adjacent, whatever label you want to call that would make your mother's hair stand on end on the back of her neck, make her freak out. Whatever label you want to put on this, go right ahead. We are a podcast. We go 5 days a week. We do a long show on Tuesday. We do 30 minutes now, Monday through Friday. Could be a little less, like a 25 or 26. Could be 34, 35. I don't know. It's whatever I feel. So go ahead and like us on your favorite podcast app. Give us a rate and a review. That really helps us in the rankings. Also support the Patreon at patreon.com, Good Morning Comrade. Check us out there. And go to the website where Good Morning Comrade, you get to see all our shining faces. Also, you can sign up for our email list and get exclusive stuff only to people who are registered on our email list. And we really appreciate all you guys' help with the podcast, all the positive feedback we're getting. Haven't gotten any trolls yet, so that's how we know we haven't made it, because everybody seems to love us so far, and we're really blowing up in the iTunes rankings. So again, thank you so much. Now here we are Monday morning, and I'm sure over the weekend, if you put Joe Biden's name into the Google machine, you will see him completely eviscerated by everybody's favorite baby cager, everybody's favorite put him in jail for marijuana possession, and also put parents in jail whose kids are truant, District Attorney of the Year, Kamala Harris. And we will get to her later in a little bit. Don't think she gets off scot-free and freewheeling and fancy-free and clean, because she is dirty as dirty gets. She's already walked back her position from the debates where she raised her hand and said she wanted to, the question was, do you want to abolish private insurance, which is a given, which I wholeheartedly agree needs to happen, or Medicare for all will not work. She raised her hand. Her handlers got to her because they know where her funding is coming from Wall Street, from the medical industry. They collectively got in her ear and said, no ma'am. That position is, if you want this campaign money, you still want to run, because you're definitely not getting it from the people. We are only lifelink, Wall Street and insurance companies, so you're definitely going to walk that back. And she did. But like I said, we will totally get to her. So in a premeditated, cold-blooded, the woman has excellent political instincts. She's a killer. In a premeditated attack, she might have ended Joe Biden's presidential dreams right there on that stage. It was premeditated, obviously, and she's kind of reveling in the premeditation because that little girl was me pictures that her campaign put out were immediately that morning after the debates put on a t-shirt and sold on her website. So they had that thing locked and loaded. And as much as I said, I was really sad about Elizabeth Warren not being on that first debate stage with Joe Biden, because Elizabeth Warren hates Joe Biden with a passion, and we will get to that in this cast. In a way, I got more than I could have ever dreamed with Kamala Harris, because identity politics are a thing. And let me break this down and explain. Identity politics for good, bad, or indifferent are definitely a thing. So, in a carryover from the 2016 Democratic primary, and also, I would say to some point the election, but let's just say the primary. The battle cry for liberal women in the United States and who align themselves with the Democratic Party is no more old white men. You see it on Twitter. You'll see it on your Facebook feed. That's just a political reality. And I'm not putting any kind of value judgment on that, good, bad, or indifferent. But for Joe Biden, and I'm sure his campaign understands this, but him as an old white guy, running for the office of President of the United States, for him to go on that stage and not understand that the younger black woman who's running against you talks to you about your terrible civil rights record, your only option is to stand there and take it, and hopefully you survive. That's all you can do. And again, there are plenty of things that we will get into in a later date to criticize Kamala Harris. But if you don't understand that that is happening, you really don't have any political instincts left. And that's what I saw out of Joe Biden when he tried to chastise the black woman in 2019 on the Democratic primary stage. You cannot do that. That is a suicide pill you just ingested. Will not work. And the idea that even I was starting off saying that, man, I really wanted to see Elizabeth Warren on that stage. And now, after that Kamala Harris attack, it seems obvious that, of course, that's where you would go with that. Of course, that would be the only person who could deliver that attack, and it could stick, and it could land and devastate him in the way that it has in the news cycle over the weekend. Bernie could have not have done that. Bernie could not have delivered that attack at all. She was the only one on that stage who could do it, and she did it. Joe Biden is a creature from another era who, on that debate stage, looked old, tired, confused, angry. And again, if you want to get angry, have a physically angry look on your face during a debate, in 2019, Kamala Harris is not the one to do that with at all. So yes, the enemy of my enemy is most definitely my friend. And I feel like what's happened here is the collective scales that leftists and other people who are really, really active in politics have been screaming about why Joe Biden should not run for president, why he is a guaranteed loser to Trump, and then also why it's flat out inappropriate for him to run for president. I feel like the scales have been lifted from people's eyes, and I don't care who delivers that message at this point. All I care about is happening. So let's use this opportunity to talk about some of the history of Joe Biden in brief. Give you the abbreviation, all the worst hits from the Joe Biden catalog of terrible political calls. And I know I'm going to miss some because I don't have that much time. But we're going to get into this. And what I want to lay out, if you're listening to this podcast, which you are because you're hearing the sound of my voice, a lot of you live in the South. A lot of you live in emerging battleground states like Texas, Georgia, North and South Carolina, especially like North and South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. A lot of you come from Florida. And your vote in the Democratic primary is really going to count. So you most likely already know that Joe Biden is terrible, that he is inappropriate for this campaign and should not be running. But this is kind of take this as how to convince your Meemaw and your Pop, who are huge Obama fans, how to talk to them about Joe Biden. So with Joe, I don't want to go back to the past first. Let's go middle, Obama era, then we'll go past, then we'll go present. Let's do that. Now, first I want to start off with why President Barack Obama, at the time candidate Barack Obama, why did he even pick Joe Biden as a running mate? Now, we can attack Obama from the left, and I've said this to people in my life that I supported Obama, campaigned for Obama, did a ton of volunteer work for Obama. But he turned out to be a centrist president that really, through his ineffectiveness and unwillingness to stand up to the people who flushed him with cash during his campaign and re-election campaign, Wall Street, he laid the path for Donald Trump. His ineffectiveness is how we got Trump. With that being said, let's talk about, again, why Joe Biden was his vice president. Barack Obama chose Joe Biden as a vice president to smooth over the fact that we were going to have the first black president with a quote-unquote Muslim name, Barack Hussein Obama. He picked I won't even say middle of the road. Joe Biden is right-wing. He's right-wing. Not a middle-of-the-road centrist guy. The things that he's voted on, the things that he's agreed with, the people that he stood for and stood with, completely right-wing. So it was a VP pick. Most of the time is always about shoring up your flanks. For Obama, it was about securing crossover Republican votes in the Midwest, and it worked. So let us talk about some of the terrible legislation that got us to where he was seen as a safe VP pick to pick up crossover right-wingers. We could start with the awful crime bill. Crime bill has been has been linked rightfully to Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. But also Joe Biden had a huge hand in writing this terrible thing that incarcerated and over-policed black and brown communities and incarcerated hundreds of thousands of people for petty possession drug crimes. The 1994 Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act played a key role in supercharging the for-profit prison industry and turned the United States into a nation with the world's highest incarceration rate. The world's highest incarceration rate. We lock more people up than anywhere else in the world. Just imagine that. You think about China, you think about Russia, these huge countries, and we lock more people up for petty drug possession. Did you also know this little nugget that Joe Biden argued that drug users were the real reason and the cause of drug proliferation in this country? That if we go after drug users, sick people with an addiction, mind you, we go after them, that somehow would stem the flow of drug sales, illegal illicit drug sales in this country. Are you out of your mind? No, he wasn't out of his mind. He wasn't crazy. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that this would fill for-profit prisons where he gets his money from, Wall Street, the senator from MBMA, but he knew that this would fill the prisons up with people without the money to defend themselves, without the money that are just going to get railroaded right through the system. In the crime bill, harsher sentences for crack cocaine than that of powder cocaine. Because if you go after people with powder cocaine, those are people who are more affluent, more money. You might drag some influential people along with that. But if you just focus on crack cocaine and come down hard on that, well, who cares if who cares if hundreds of thousands of poor crack users who cannot defend themselves in our unjust legal system get railroaded? These are just bodies to throw on the capitalist pyre of for-profit prisons. Now we can touch on Joe's love affair with segregationists and his hatred for busing, which worked. Busing was good. Let's just get that out of the way right now. Busing worked because it broke up separate but equal the idea that if we're going to have a public utility, which is schools, we cannot have just rich white people going to one school, poor black and brown people going to another. Everybody must have skin in the game. That's why busing worked, because as soon as rich white kids started getting bused to poor black schools, their parents said, "What the hell's going on here? You better fix our school." That's why it works. That is America only works when everyone has skin in the game. I just want to make that clear and get that out of the way, because I hear this weird argument that like busing didn't work and desegregation didn't work. No, it definitely worked. Like, our schools are trash now because of charter schools, because we don't fund public education. We've chipped away at it bit by bit. In my city, New Orleans, we don't even have public schools anymore. The kids must compete to go to schools, and they're trash. That's why our public education school system does not work. right now in this country, because the right wing and conservatives have bit by bit, year by year, defunded it, chipped away at it, made it unattractive to attract good teachers and good administrators, and now they're trash. Back on subject. Back to Joe. Now, in 1975, when Boston residents protested and rioted over the city's desegregation order, Biden came out in favor of an amendment introduced by North Carolina Senator Jesse Helms. Y'all, do a quick Google search when you get to work. I know most of y'all listen to this on drive time. Not a good guy. White supremacist and segregationist. Helms' amendment would bar the then active Department of Health, Education, and Welfare from collecting data about the race of students or teachers, and also prevents the department from requiring schools to classify teachers or students by race. Helms proudly announced that the measure would effectively end any federal oversight or enforcement of busing. Now, and the cherry on top of all that, there's a 1975 interview floating around where Biden said that if legislation failed, he would be open to using a constitutional amendment to end mandated busing. You see where this man's bread is buttered. Now, when he's up against the wall, let's take a President Biden. And if a President Biden got into office, you're seeing how he would govern. You're seeing the people that he would serve, that he would write. What would he write an executive order for? Who would he push a constitutional amendment? Racist and segregationists, and leave the rest of us out here in the cold. That's how the man would govern. He's already shown you how he would govern. And if Kamala Harris is going to stand on stage and say, Joe Biden, I don't believe you're a racist. Okay, let's be super generous to the man. He's not a racist. But he's showing you how he would govern by his past. And you take a man like him and you put him up against a Bernie Sanders who, when things were not popular, he stood for the right things. He's been out in the political wilderness for decades now. And now everybody's come around and said, you know what, these are some really good ideas. This guy, not 4 years ago, was called a kook. Bernie did the right things when they weren't popular. Biden did the wrong things out of best case being the most civil, the most generous, out of political expediency and convenience to serve his right-wing constituency. Or what he thought was his constituent at the time. I don't know. Because his real masters are the banks. His real masters are Wall Street and MBMA. That's why he was called the senator from MBMA. He is a bag man for Delaware finance. Always has been his whole career. And he's shown that with the bankruptcy bill. The 2005 Bankruptcy Abuse Protection and Consumer Protection Act, which he helped write, which he was a supporter of and helped write, made it harder for regular people like you and I with credit card debt, because of whatever reason. Maybe lost our job, maybe we had medical expenses, one of our family members got sick, anything. It doesn't even matter. Who cares why? You know what? It feels almost ridiculous that I have to qualify it like that. Who cares? What if you ran up your credit card bill at the track? It's no different than what these companies do, what the Wall Street does, and then goes to the American people and want a tax bailout. I don't care how a consumer got there, but Joe Biden made it harder for working class people to file for bankruptcy. That's the main thing you need to know. He served the people who put him in office. MBMA Bank, which gave his son a job after he graduated college, and angered a certain Harvard bankruptcy law professor who was so appalled by this legislation that she got into politics and became a senator, and now is on a presidential debate stage, and now is in a good position to probably be president of the United States. That woman's name is Elizabeth Warren. So Elizabeth Warren's whole career has been about trying to undo the fucking mess that Joe Biden created. How about that for a superhero origin story? How does that fit you? That'd make a good movie. The bill made it harder for individuals to file bankruptcy and get out of debt. A legal change that credit card companies and major retailers had championed for years. The bill passed Congress with large majorities, but most Democratic senators, including Barack Obama, voted no. Biden voted yes, and again showed where his political instincts are and who he will serve. It's not people. It's always going to be Wall Street, and it's always going to be big capital. That's who the man speaks for. That's who the man's running for. He has no real platform. He has no sense of service to the people who actually vote for him and put him in power. That's been his MO for the time that he's been a senator to now. He's trying again for the third time, I think, to run for president. And he always fizzles out, and it's weird because I almost don't want him to fizzle out. Like, I want him to drop out because he's awful, but I want him to stay in because he puts such a spotlight on old third way Bill Clinton bullshit Democratic policies. And he puts such a spotlight on capitalism that I want him to stay in. I want to see third way triangulalism's death rattle. I want to see capitalism put on trial on that debate stage every time he comes out. So I'm conflicted on what I want him to do. It's like, I don't want him in the arena, in the Coliseum, but if I have to have him there, I want him torn apart by the lions, which would be the other candidates in that Coliseum. 40% of the electorate now, 40% are millennials. I'm a late millennial myself. I mean, millennials are already old. And Joe Biden is going to sit on a stage and say, let's read this. The younger generation tells me how tough things are. Give me a break. No, I have no empathy for it. Give me a break. You have no empathy, Joe? You have no empathy for the person with a master's degree who's working 2-3 jobs trying to make ends meet? You have no empathy for the person who all they want to do with their lives is teach and better society, and they can't get a good teaching job because teaching used to be a good profession, but there aren't any public schools anymore in New Orleans. They're all charters. You can be fired at the drop of a hat. You're underpaid, overworked, so you lose your drive to better our society. You don't have any empathy for people in this generation who've just checked out, who've just said, you know what, I'm just going to work a dead-end job and let all my dreams die on the vine because there's really nothing for me here. You don't have any empathy for the trans and the gay and the black and the brown and the people just trying to find their way in this world and just trying to exist. But they've got the forces of capitalism. They've got the forces of racism that want them dead. Homophobia, of sexism coming down on them. You don't have any empathy for them, Joe? Let's see what else he said. This nugget here. Direct quote from the man. Because here's the deal, guys. We decided we were going to change the world. He means himself and his generation, and we did. We did. We finished the civil rights movement. You finished the fucking civil rights movement? What are you talking about? Here's a man who... Let me read the rest of this. We finished the civil rights movement in the first stage. The women's movement came into be. So my message is, get involved. There's no place to hide. One, what does that end mean? Get involved. There's no place to hide. Yeah, people are involved. They're involved with putting your terrible brand of politics to bed, to burying it. And here, you finished the civil rights movement. What are you talking about, Joe? You were talking like a man who's living at the end of you think you're living in the end of history. I got news for you, my man. Like, the fight is not only just over, not over. It's just begun. Reactionary forces are clamoring now for black and brown and gay and women's death and subjugation more than almost any time in history. They see that culture, those reactionary forces see that culture is leaving them behind, much like it's already left you behind. And they're doing whatever they can to fight against that. And people who are just trying to live their lives and do the best they can in this damn near dystopia are losing their life over it and losing their freedom. They still, mass incarceration, still a thing. That's not civil rights. That's not the new Jim Crow. In Florida, they just passed a de facto poll tax. Because now Governor DeSantis got elected, one of the first things he's done is, if you get out of prison now and you want you've done your time in prison and you want to vote again, you want your voting rights reestablished, something that should have never been taken from you in the first place, but you want them back, you have to pay unreasonable court costs, unreasonable restitution. I forget, there's something else. There's a myriad of fees and fines and red tape that you have to go through to get back your civil rights, even though you've paid your debt to society. That's a poll tax, Joe. Is that ending? Is that finishing the civil fucking rights movement? Is that mission accomplished, Joe? I mean, I could go on and on forever and ever. We could talk about this. This is a fight that's just not going to be over. Not in my lifetime. I don't know how long I'm going to live, but definitely not in my lifetime. So I don't know the world that he's talking about. It's the same world where he thinks he was vice president for 8 years, and I don't know what the hell he was doing for 8 years, where he thinks he's going to sit up here and tell me that he's going to become president of the United States, and all of a sudden all the Republicans are just going to roll along with him. Instead of what they did when he was vice president and when he was a senator, what they did was he did their bidding, and they laughed at him. They said, look at this sucker. Look at this idiot selling out the American people, going along with us. Oh, he thinks he's going to come to us and get something? Absolutely not. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. He rolls with us anyway. He's not going to come to us and ask us for anything. Hell, he's one of us. That's what they say. Not even laughing at him. He's one of us. So you don't have any empathy for me, Joe, for a millennial, and you don't have any empathy for the millennials behind me, because again, we're already old, or whatever the hell we're calling this next generation. You don't have any. Again, you don't have any empathy for the kids that got shot up at Parkland, or the kids who are murdered all across the country in these school shootings by people who have decided that, you know what, there's no prospects for me. I'm just going to drop out of society, and by doing that, when I say drop out of society, I'm going to shoot up my own school and kill a bunch of people and then kill myself, I guess, because they don't see any path forward. You don't have any empathy for that, Joe? I don't have any empathy for you and your impotent presidential campaign. And I hope I hope you stay in. And I hope you continue to make a fool of yourself. And I hope that these other candidates make a fool out of you. And this is your legacy to your dying day, because it's what you deserve. You don't deserve to be Uncle Joe, Jovial Joe. You don't deserve to be the old guy out of time who likes to sniff people's hair. You deserve to be labeled, here lies Joe Biden, segregationist defender, poor people destroyer, poor people jailer, no empathy Joe. That's what you deserve. And I have a feeling the longer you stay in this campaign, that's what you're going to get. That's my time for this morning. I hope you're fired up, ready to go sell your labor. I hope this got you going. Again, every day, Monday through Friday. Long show will be tomorrow on Tuesday. Go ahead and give us a like, subscribe, give us a rate. Really appreciate that. Support the Patreon. Good Morning Comrade on Patreon. All kinds of fun rewards coming for you. And thank you again so much for listening. We'll see you tomorrow.